Now is the time to get on the ride. This is it, right now, unlike any other time in human history, but you better hurry. For far too long, the odds have been stacked against new entrepreneurs. For decades, only those in the ivory towers of big corporations had access to the essentials for business success. They controlled the raw materials and resources needed to create products. They controlled money and talent. They controlled the shelf space in stores and the ships, trains, and trucks needed to fill them. And they controlled all the media and marketing, from newspapers and magazines to radio and TV. It was a game where they made the rules, ran the board, and reserved victory for themselves. But that was the industrial age game, and now it's game over. We've reached a tipping point in technology, and it's shaking the ivory towers right down to their foundations. Every one of those points of control, once held in the unrelenting grasp of the corporate few, has been liberated by technology. They're now available to the enterprising many. So, with control in the palm and in the lap of every ambitious individual with an idea, the playing field has truly been leveled. The world's marketplace is at everyone's fingertips, literally. And the payoff is astonishing. In the past decade, global wealth has risen by 69%. A report published by Deloitte recently predicted the number of new millionaires would reach unprecedented growth, doubling by 2025. But recent trends show that the report is wrong. Their estimate was too low. The number of new millionaires is skyrocketing. Never before has the average person without privilege, special education, training, previous wealth, or connections been offered the unlimited opportunity and financial abundance that are available today. Never before has the average person been offered such a unique opportunity to join the elite ranks of millionaires. And what will all those millionaires have in common? Almost all of them will be entrepreneurs, just like you. The first moment of the entrepreneur roller coaster is right now, and it's a choice, one that only you can make. You're standing at the ticket booth. You can choose to seize the moment and pass through the turnstiles, or you can turn and walk away. What will it be? Before you decide, I want you to envision something. It's 20, 30, or 40 years from now. You're bouncing your great-grandchild on your knee. She looks around your house in awe and then up at you with big wide eyes and asks, "What did you do? How did we end up like this?" And you will be able to say, "I was there, my child. I was there at the critical juncture in time when the industrial age ended and the connected age began." How will you end that sentence? Do you want to say, "I took full advantage of that incredible moment in history, and my choices made possible the full, prosperous lives we love so much"? Or do you want to say, "But I missed it. I didn't do anything about it. It passed me by, and that's why we're stuck"? Don't miss out. Take the ride with me. There will be people who recognize the opportunity, who stand up, take notice, and take action. Why not you? People far less smart, capable, talented, or hardworking will stand up. People with lower education, social standing, or family connections will take notice. Hey, even people not as nice, kind, or generous as you will take action. People all around you will become millionaires before your very eyes. Why not you? You could be one of those new millionaires. What's stopping you? Is it your friends, your family, your coworkers? Maybe it's the haters, the doubters, the naysayers, and skeptics who won't do it for themselves and don't want you to. Or are you stopping yourself? Is it the fear of financial insecurity, your supposed lack of time or money? Or maybe it's the voice in your head that keeps telling you that you'll never make it. Now is the time of great opportunity. I believe that we all have entrepreneurial roots, but that doesn't mean the ride isn't challenging. I know because I've experienced it, and I know because I see it every day. I've seen, too, people struggle with their businesses because no one helped them with things that really matter. I've seen too many businesses fail that shouldn't have, all because they lacked the clarity and support they needed to stay on the rails and master the ride. Take the ticket, pass through the turnstile, step into the car, and take the seat next to me. We are about to take the ride of your lifetime. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. Are you ready to ride? Okay, put a smile on your face, your hands in the air, and scream. Today's discussion, I will share with you the spark that drove you to the ticket booth, how you overcame the fear of getting on the ride, how you picked up speed, put your hands in the air, and didn't lose your mind, and the track ahead, buying your ticket for the next ride. Walk by any roller coaster at any given amusement park, and if you look just to the left or right of where the line begins, you're likely to see this sight: an anxious child standing with his back against a lined board. Each line on the board marks an inch, and there's always one line that matters the most. It's the line that marks the height required to ride. To reach that line, a kid will do just about anything: stand tall, hold his breath, stuff his shoes, fluff up his hair, anything that might make him look a fraction of an inch taller. Stretched, puffed, and fluffed, he waits for the verdict. Does he meet the height requirement? Can he physically survive the drops, the corkscrews, and the G-forces that elicit the ear-piercing screams? Is it safe for him to ride? Believe it or not, this is exactly where the entrepreneur's journey begins for you too, in the very same moments just before taking the plunge, when you anxiously assess whether or not you'll be able to survive the ride. And although there won't be any authorities to kick you off if you come up short, there is still an admission requirement. For this ride, though, the requirement isn't height. It's love. Franklin P. Jones was right. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. It's such an essential element that if you don't love it, you better off not be getting on the ride at all. Rock stars know it. Business gurus know it. Every successful person interviewed in the media and on stage knows it too. The first and the most important factor in building a successful business is that you have to love it. But why does love matter so much? And how on earth do you find it? That is where this ride begins. You have to find what matters. You have to love it, or else. The best explanation I've ever heard for why you have to absolutely love what you do was from Steve Jobs, a man I would argue was the greatest entrepreneur in history. During an interview with him, Jobs said, quote, "People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you aren't having fun doing it and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. Oftentimes, it's the ones that are successful who loved what they did, so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit. Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? If you don't love it, you're going to fail." Unquote. So, Ask yourself, do you love it? Does your business make your heart go pitter-patter? Because if you're not crazy in love, you're not going to make it. You'll give up. And no one would blame you, actually. Even the universe-denting Iron Man entrepreneur Elon Musk said that starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. Wow. Eating glass. Only someone who's in love, because love can make you do crazy things, and that's exactly what you need to do to make it. You have to find your passion. And you'll need to love it. But how do you find the real thing? You've heard the term pursue your passion. It's a popular phrase. It's a luxury of our modern world. When we apply it to business, though, we need to get very clear about what that means. Whenever I hear I can't find my passion, I want to respond with, did you look under the seat of your car? Is it between the couch cushions under your bed? What do you mean you can't find your passion? Where did you lose it? Did it fall out of your pocket? The truth is that looking for your passion is just an excuse in disguise. We use it to cover up for the fact that we're not progressing, growing, and taking action in life. The real problem isn't that it's lost or missing. Passion isn't something you find or discover. Passion is already there. It's like a light switch. It's always there. Even when the switch is turned off, the electricity is there, running red hot, waiting in the wires ready to be turned on. There's no wandering around wondering where it's hiding. And if you want to feel it, then like electricity, all you have to do is flip the switch to on. But how do you do that? So let's talk about the light switch or the sparks, because you need a spark. You need to be passionate about what you do. This is the spark everyone focuses on and believes is the only one that really matters. It's not. It's a spark. Make no mistake, but it's also the spark you should be most wary of. I hear people say all the time, but I'm just not passionate about what I do. I know you think you should live a life of exalted and uninterrupted passion all day, every day, but that's just not how it works. Yeah, what about Bono, Branson, or Oprah, you ask? Trust me, if you saw their schedules, the day in, day out demands they are under, the pressure they shoulder, you wouldn't think what they do 95% of the time is really all that great. The mistake people make is that they judge one person's front of stage persona with their back of stage reality. And think about that. How much time per day is Bono on stage doing what he loves, or Branson in the press launching a new revolutionary business, or Oprah on camera fulfilling her mission to use television to transform people's lives? The reality is very little. 5% is generous. The rest of their days are spent in endless meetings, negotiations, contract reviews, lawsuits, makeup chairs, rehearsals, travel, and transportation. So don't over-romanticize the idea of being wholly passionate about what you do. It's true that 5% of what those folks get to do is pretty cool, but no matter what you do, it's going to really not be great most of the time, because nothing is awesome all of the time. But it's the truth. The Wall Street Journal that read, "Do what you love?" ? Maybe not. Would-be entrepreneurs are often told to follow their passion. That may be a good way to kill your passion. But some people do indeed find their passions. Some passions are meant to remain hobbies, something that you do just for fun. Don't be fooled by the falsely exalted what switch. That bulb can burn out at a moment's notice and leave you stumbling around in the dark. The next spark is being passionate about why you do it. Are you passionate 100% of the time about what you do? Probably not. Like what Mark Twain says, The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Have you realized yet your why? If you're truly in love with the results of what you do, which is the why, then you can pretty much navigate the rough 95% with grace. The next spark is to be passionate about how you do it. People who are driven by the how switch or spark inspire us to live up to a higher standard of excellence. You've seen mechanics, gardeners, toll takers, cab drivers, CPAs, lawyers, and CEOs execute the hows of their work with great passion and joy. They all brought the same enthusiasm and excellence to what they did, not because of what they're doing or why they're doing it, but because of how they were doing it. Their passion was in the quality of the activity, the execution, and the outcome. You can flip the how switch on anytime. It could be as simple as how you fill out an expense report. It could be the way you prepare for a meeting. It could be the way you get dressed in the morning. It just requires bringing a level of presence, joy, and energy into everything and anything you choose. Loving how you do what you do can be a passionate, rewarding, and enlightening way to live. The next spark is to be passionate about who you do it for. This is the means to an end switch. You might not be passionate about what you do, why you do it, or even how you go about doing it, but you do it with passion because of who it benefits. The who might be your children, your family, your community, your country, or someone else entirely. But here's the surprise, it's not you. An interesting quote by Martin Luther King says, "If you haven't found something you are willing to die for, you aren't fit to live." Interesting phrase. But when you think about your business or your professional life, maybe what you do really isn't all that awe-inspiring. Maybe there's no great mission or grand why to it. Maybe you aren't really all that impassioned to make how you perform daily tasks your work of art either. But maybe it's the perfect resource to help, support, and provide financial security to whom you love and cherish. When you simply refocus your mind and attention on who is being served by what you do, why and how you do it, all of a sudden your passion is re-engaged, turned on, and the entire process becomes more meaningful. Finding your fight. So, your heart's beating, there's a burning desire to push yourself to achieve something that's coming from a place of love. But when it comes to figuring out if you found your business soulmate, there are two sides to this love coin. Your unstoppable drive can also come from anger. In fact, someone who's stark raving mad can be more unstoppable than one who is just punch drunk in love. But here's the trick. While our ancient brain system has evolved to help us survive, it's also a great secret to achievement, motivation. You can hack your ancient brain and use it to give you superhuman powers. All you need to do is find your fight. I'm going to say that again. All you need to do is find your fight. Almost every great achievement began with someone finally getting mad or angry and saying, "Enough. I've had enough," and standing up to fight. Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, John F. Kennedy. The list is very, very long. You get the point. A good enemy gives you a reason to get fired up. A nemesis pushes you to reach deep and use your skills, talents, and abilities to their fullest. Having to fight challenges your character and resolve. A fight will lead you to push harder, go farther, and hang on longer than you ever would otherwise. The reality is love and hate are the same thing, just looking in different directions. If you love something, you equally hate what threatens it. If you love health and well-being, then you probably hate cancer and heart disease. If you love whales, then you probably hate global chemical pollution and human-activated climate change. If you love people and equal rights, then you probably hate gender discrimination, minority injustice, and poverty. Being successful in business requires an emotional charge. Love is great, but if that charge comes from your desire to right a wrong, fight the good fight, or seek justice, then it's just as good as love and often even better. If you've ever read The Compound Effect, you can feel anger against the overzealous commercial media that makes us for fools and bamboozles us into believing in the quick fix, immediate gratification, and overnight success if you know what I'm going to say, swipe your credit card, 3 easy payments. It's all good. But one of the best days of your life can be when you've had enough, when you said, I've had it, and then stand up and fight. So let me ask you this. What are you willing to fight for? What do you see as an enemy to your industry, your family, your community, or your world? The hate of something negative can be a powerful force for good, but if thinking about fighting or hate feels uncomfortable, then start here. Think about what you love. What positive outcome do you want to see realized as a result of your product, your service, or your business? You have to put that image in your mind. What positive outcome do you want to see realized as a result of your product, your service, or your business? Now, what's the opposite of that? What threatens that? What's the enemy of that? There is your enemy. That is your epic battle. What's your fight? And then, of course, you have to find your strength. All of this, of turning on your passion, fighting the fight of a lifetime, it really doesn't mean anything if you don't have the strength to take it on. On the entrepreneurial roller coaster, though, strength isn't about how much you can bench press. It's about how well you can identify your unique advantages and flex your business muscles. There are all kinds of examples about billionaire Warren Buffett. How he refused to invest in internet stocks, how people were calling him out of touch, that he was too old, and then the internet bubble popped and everybody said about him that he was so smart, he was such a genius. And he said something like, when he held up his thumb and his index finger to make a circle, he says, "This is my circle of competency. So I want you to do this. I want you to take your thumb and your index finger and make a circle. That is your circle of competency. You only get involved in opportunities that are inside that circle. If it's not in there, you don't think about it, you don't invest in it. It's just not for you." So Warren Buffett said, we all have unique skills, talents, and advantages. Every one of us do. There are some things that you do that most people cannot do as well. Those strengths are your special gifts. You should identify what they are to determine if a business is right for you. Let me ask you this question. Honest answer. Were you born strong? Have you ever heard anybody tell you, or someone that you know or care about, that success just isn't part of your DNA? Have you ever heard that from a sibling, from a supposed friend, from a teacher? That's a hard thing to hear from someone, especially someone that you care about. But I offer this to you as hope. Richard Branson had dyslexia, and had poor academic performance as a student. His headmaster told him he would likely end up in prison. Steve Jobs was born to two college students who didn't want to raise him and gave him up for adoption. Mark Cuban was born to an automobile upholsterer. He started as a bartender, then got a job in software sales from which he was fired. Susie Orman's dad was a chicken farmer, and her mother was a secretary. Susie started as a waitress. Retired General Colin Powell was born in Harlem to immigrant parents from Jamaica. He was a solid C student. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, was born in a housing authority in the Bronx, and his father was a truck driver. Barbara Corcoran, known as the Queen of New York City, is one of 11 children, started as a waitress, and admits to having been fired from more jobs than most people hold in a lifetime. You all know about J.K. Rowling, the woman behind the popular Harry Potter series. She was a single mother living on welfare when she wrote the first book of her series. She was rejected by 12 different publishers before selling her book for a measly $4,000. The work was an international hit, and she went on to write 6 more books for the series, which sold into the hundreds of millions of dollars and was adapted into a huge blockbuster film franchise. Rowling is now the 13th wealthiest person in Britain, and she's even wealthier than the Queen. And then you know about Oprah Winfrey. Looking at Oprah today, you would never know. She was born to a single mother and grew up in extreme poverty. Her start to life was rough, and she was constantly passed back and forth between her mother and grandmother to raise her. She's also shared that she was sexually abused from a young age. Before her rise to fame on her daytime talk show, Oprah started out as a television reporter. She was fired from one of her early jobs because producers thought she was unfit for TV. Yet she persevered, and after a few years she landed what would become the Oprah Winfrey Show, one of the most successful daytime talk shows in history. She rose to the top of an industry dominated by white males and was the first black woman billionaire in history. She is quite the extreme of a rags to riches story, but she has done it with hard work and constant perseverance. Here's the deal. No matter what your DNA is, no matter who calls you into their office, you always get to decide. You are the creator of your destiny while you traverse this planet. The mindset of they were born to be successful and I am not is a trick of the imagination. It's a trap of the worst kind. And the only way to escape it is by creating a success destiny mindset. A success destiny mindset, day by day and hour by hour. Don't let anyone else tell you what your strength is or is not. They may be wrong, and as a result, their input could slow you down or even derail you. Have you ever been to Space Mountain? For me, Space Mountain was much scarier than any other ride at the amusement park. Because you can't see what's ahead. It's impossible to prepare yourself for what comes next. The unexpected turns and drops feel more severe, and the speed feels dangerous, life-threatening even, always plunging into the unknown and seems like certain doom. This is exactly what it feels like to be an entrepreneur. A normal roller coaster, like a normal life, can be scary enough, but a ride done in the dark transforms the experience from scary to downright terrifying. But it's also part of what makes it so awesome. I still like to go ride Space Mountain, and it does scare the life out of me, but I absolutely love it. And if you're going to become an entrepreneur, you are going to face fear. You're going to be scared. You are going to come face to face with daily uncertainty and wonder if your rocket is going to derail and if you will die a sudden death. And you're going to do all that, by the way, in the dark, and hopefully you don't get sick in the process. But facing those things is non-negotiable because once you start, you don't get to choose a ride that won't cause you fear. But you can choose to face that fear head on and, like your own personal space mountain, even learn to love it. You have to face down the fear. Easier said than done. There's a story of a wise elder walking through a graveyard with his young apprentice. The elder proclaimed, "The world's greatest entrepreneur is buried in this cemetery. Can you pick her out?" After a short search, the young apprentice found the grandest headstone and pointed to it. "This must be her, right?" "No," said the elder, "it's the one you are standing on." The young apprentice looked under his feet. The tombstone was hardly visible and barely marked. "She lived and died, never making more than $30,000 a year," said the elder. "She never had the courage to become an entrepreneur, but had she faced her fears, she would have been the greatest." Most people never live up to the potential they have been given. The results they produce and the life they experience are only a tiny fraction of what they are truly capable of. But why? What stops us? Only one thing: fear. Fear can stifle, block, and bury your potential. Most people who never step up to ride the roller coaster resist because they believe that entrepreneurs are fearless, courageous risk takers who never doubt themselves, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Every great entrepreneur starts out scared. Every one. Richard Branson started out scared. Bill Gates started out scared. 100% of them started out scared. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear is proceeding anyway. Nelson Mandela said, quote, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." Unquote. The entrepreneurs who make it are brave not because of the absence of fear, but because they put one foot in front of the other and face down that fear every day. So how do you do it? It begins with understanding what's really going on when you feel fear. Sure, it feels real. You have sweaty palms, a pounding heart, knocking knees, and those are real enough symptoms. But the thing we're actually afraid of is an illusion, an invention of the mind. Ultimately, a spider can't make you scared. A prospecting call can't make you scared. The only thing that can make you scared is how your mind interprets those things. So fear is a phenomenon that resides entirely within your own brain. It's the mind that gives every interpretation meaning. It's your mind that conjures the negative emotion. Fear is not real. It's an illusion, a phenomenon that resides entirely within your own brain. This is why one person can look over the edge of a cliff and be gripped by a fear of heights, while another one finds great joy in cliff diving or jumping out of an airplane. The reality is the same, but the mind's interpretation and the emotion it generates are different. Why is this? What's happening here? It's called the ancient brain. Mankind has been around for a long, long time. For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived in what were considered primitive times. During those primitive years, our brains had to be on constant alert in order to protect us from some pretty serious threats: lions and cougars, hiding in the brush, leopards stalking from behind trees, attacks from neighboring tribes. There were danger was lurking behind every corner. And it was the humans with the brains that best monitored and most quickly responded to threats who survived to reproduce. So if you were slow on the threat sensing, that was a problem. Instead of you eating lunch, you were lunch. The stakes were high, and by necessity, as a species, we became very good at identifying threats and responding to them. In today's times, we are not under the same sort of constant mortal threat, but much of our primitive brain is still there, operating at full throttle, and it's still doing its job, triggering the same nervous system responses to threats. The only problem is now, instead of lions and cougars and leopards, our nervous system has identified something else as a threat. The fear and flight response signals the brain gave our ancestors when they were face to face with a roaring lion are now the same signals we now feel when we look at a telephone before making a cold call. The fear and panic brain response that was caused when a small warrior tribe attacked our ancient relatives is the very same brain response we feel when standing in front of a small group to give a presentation. The same nervous and alarm signals that the primitive brain gave our ancestors when they stood vulnerable and exposed on an open plain is the very same mechanism that is responsible for how we feel when we stand on stage in front of a large group. So, what does that really mean? Yes, we were working with our primitive brain to run a modern day life, and we have to change that. So we have to find a way to modernize our brain. So here are some brain hacks to conquer fear. The first thing you have to do is get real. The first thing you have to do is gain perspective. Okay, you have to separate reality from fantasy. It's not a lion, it's a phone. If you dial it and the other person answers, they won't eat you. If you stand in front of a small group, they're not going to pillage your village. A good question to ask yourself before doing anything you think fear is, if I do this, am I going to die? And if the answer is no, then your fear is made up and over dramatic and it should have no power over you. Another brain hack is it's the fear of fear that you fear. I'm going to say it again. It's the fear of fear that you fear. Oddly, it's not even calling a stranger or making a speech that generates our fear. It's the anticipation of doing it, which again is an illusion of the mind. This pre-fear is what happens before you pick up the phone, before you go on a stage, and before you walk out across the room to introduce yourself to a stranger. It's the anticipation of fear kicking in. It's your ancient mind's illusion. But once you are engaged in the activity, think about this. All of a sudden, you become calm. Your brain realizes you are not toe-to-toe with a predator, and this is not the primitive mortal threat you feared it would be. And just remember, the fear itself hurts more than the thing you're scared of. Another brain hack is to use 20 seconds of courage. Courage is overestimated. You don't need to be brave all day, every day to be successful. In fact, you barely have to be courageous at all. You can be a coward 99.9305556% of the time. That's your whole day except for just 20 seconds 3 times a day. But in those 20 seconds, you can pick up the phone and make that cold call. Introduce yourself to your dream client at a networking meeting. Walk up to a circle of strangers and say hi. Begin your pitch presentation. Start a tough conversation with a loved one. Say no, even though it will make you unpopular. So, what should we do when we hit the inevitable wall of fear? The first thing you do when you start to feel that feeling, and you know what I mean, is you have to shut off your brain. Close your eyes, hold your breath if you need to, and do what every signal of your brain is insisting you don't do, and run right at it. Run right at it. You have to shut your brain off. The brain's only job is survival, so there's no way you can intellectually convince the brain that jumping out of a plane, for example, is a good idea. It will never allow you to do it, ever. You have to turn it off for the few seconds you need to hurl your body out the door. Those 20 seconds of courage are enough time to get engaged in the activity and for your brain to realize it won't get eaten. And from there on, it's all easy breezy. Another brain hack is to focus on tasks and not outcomes. Don't make mountains out of molehills. Don't make a flea magnified into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Don't over-engineer. Another brain hack: habituate yourself to fear. One organization that understands better than any other how to beat our innate fear response is the military. If the average person is scared to make a speech, imagine what the average undisciplined and slovenly teenager's response to being shot at and attacked by insurgents might be. The military takes these young newbies who have never been far from their parents' home, and through the boot camp process, they turn them into fearless warriors. It takes a well-hacked brain to face enemy fire and run towards it. But if you can train your brain to run at bullets and bombs, think of how easy it can be to train it to run towards a stage, a cold call, or a group of strangers. Another brain hack is to make fear and failure fun. Say what? Fear and failure fun? You bet. You have to go and fail a lot. Of course, it's counterintuitive. It seems counterintuitive. You would think the whole idea of success is to avoid failure. No. The key to success is actually massive failure. Your goal is to outfail your competition. In most businesses, whoever can fail the most, the fastest, and the biggest wins. Not hang on. You mean really putting my hands in the air to not hang on? Risk means acting without certainty. Sure, it's scary, but it's also what makes the entrepreneur roller coaster so thrilling. So the first time letting go was a real scary thing to do. Without that feel of the cold bar in your palms, you had no choice but to rely on the seatbelt or safety bar to hold you in. And there you were. There were moments when you could swear you were lifting right out of your seat. But if you could summon the nerve to do it, to let go, a couple of interesting things happened. What happened the minute you let go? You had to learn to trust, because if you didn't hang on, you had to believe that the safety systems on the ride actually worked, that the seatbelt would keep you in, that the shoulder harness would hold you down. You had to believe, in other words, that the systems would support you. So the first thing you learned was trust. The second thing you learned was you found the value of facing your fear. You discovered that when you put your hands in the air, you enjoyed the ride more. It was more thrilling. When you took the risk, you got more in return. Putting your hands in the air on the ride was a way of turning fear into something positive. It actually made the ride better. In the real world, in your real business, risk works the same way. You risk more, you get more. You face your fears, and you profit as a result. So, are you ready to ride with your hands in the air, to face your fear? Risk is, by definition, doing something without certainty. It's riding in the dark. It is certainly more terrifying, but that's what makes it so thrilling, so rewarding, and so amazingly awesome. So what's next for you? What ticket for what ride are you going to be buying next? First of all, you have to make your own decisions. You have to follow your own path, not the Joneses. You have to listen to your gut, your own heart, and not the ambitions of others. And don't let fear, envy, or social pressure cloud your vision. You know what you like and what you don't. You know what fulfills you and what doesn't. Use your intuition. Follow the internal pull and ignore the external distractions. Chasing someone else's model of success might have you waking up one morning and realizing that, like Andre Agassi, for example, you've been chasing something for the wrong reasons. Don't want what you don't want. This is your ride, after all, no one else's. Don't miss the point. Don't miss the point. Spend your day pursuing the things you once said in your eulogy. So think about that. Time is short. Spend your day pursuing the things you love. Before pursuing more for more's sake, pause and ask yourself an important question. Will being bigger make things better? It's really a serious question and a very important one to consider. If your first reaction is yes, then make sure you take the time to be sure. Remind yourself of what is most important to you. Is it freedom? Is it love? Is it happiness? Is it health? Is it connectedness? More time with your children, your spouse, or your friends? Now, ask yourself if going bigger, growing your company bigger, will it bring you more of what you want? And if it will, then go for it with everything you've got. But if it will take you away from the things you want most, then be very careful. Ambition is a tricky thing. It can power your ride to great speed, and you'll need ambition to drive you to grow, persevere, and realize your capabilities. But it can also drive you off the tracks to your doom. Your ambition will tell you to pursue every shiny object, chase every opportunity, and constantly go for bigger, but it might also drive you right out of your life. Bigger could mean less time with your family or less freedom as you're held prisoner by the demands of your big thing. And start with the end in mind. How do you figure out the point so you don't miss it? How do you make sure your ambition doesn't overtake your life, thus leaving you without one? So the answer is you have to start with the end in mind and work backwards. So there's the story, and everybody talks about this, about waking up and opening a newspaper. You're grabbing your cup of coffee, and you find your obituary announcing your death. So that's exactly what happened, actually, to Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel in 1888. Ludwig Nobel, Alfred's brother, had passed away, but a French newspaper mistakenly thought it was Alfred, so they printed Alfred's obituary instead. Alfred was an armaments manufacturer and the inventor of dynamite. For his accomplishments, the premature obituary named him the Merchant of Death, holding him responsible for mass destruction and blaming him for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of men. As he read his own obituary in the paper, he was shocked at the legacy he would one day actually leave behind, and he vowed then and there to change it, and in his will he left the bulk of his enormous fortune to establish the now famous Nobel Prizes. To this day, the Nobel Prizes are the highest awards that can be attained in the fields of literature, medicine, science, economics, chemistry, and peace. By thinking clearly about the end and the legacy he wanted to leave, Alfred transformed both his present actions and his future legacy. He, in fact, rewrote his own obituary, and you can do the same. In fact, it's how you can be sure you don't miss the point. Clearly define how you want your obituary to read now. Then start living in alignment with it today. Remember, bigger is only better if it's making that smile on your face wider, brighter, and fills the journey with joy. Live today as you want to be remembered in the end. Do the right thing. We all know too well how difficult it can be to keep your priorities straight when you're constantly presented with ways to make your ride faster or more exciting, or to get on the next ride and get your next ticket. With the hot air of ambition breathing down your neck, it's kind of easy to miss the point. So when ambition starts to get the better of you, stop, think before you take that ride, that next ride, get that next ticket, because you could be riding into the danger zone. And finally, trust your gut. Have no regrets. Jeff Bezos was wise to once work through his decision using a framework to minimize regret, because at the end of our days, that's what we'll be thinking about. Carl Pillemer, a professor at Cornell University, interviewed more than 1,000 older Americans from different economic, educational, and occupational backgrounds. He asked them to share the most valuable lessons they had learned. Overwhelmingly, the focus wasn't on what they did, but what they didn't do. Of 1,000 people in the later stages of life, what dominated their advice on the lessons of life was regret. One man in his late 80s was asked, if you could come back and live the life of anyone, who would you want to come back as? And his answer said, I would want to come back as the man I could have been, but never was. So be the person you could have been now. Don't wait until you're 80 and filled with regret. Be the person you could have been now. And keep your resolve. There will come a time when you will start to talk to others about your desire to hop on the roller coaster, the entrepreneurial roller coaster, and climb this next new mountain of yours. With great enthusiasm, you'll tell them about your business idea, your hopes, your dreams, your passion for a bigger and brighter future. And these people, your friends, your family, the people you love and respect, they'll listen. They'll nod their heads and grunt small approvals from time to time. But as the conversation goes on, you might notice them fidget or shift in their seats. They're waiting for you to finish so they can say something like, "What? Are you crazy? You don't know how to climb a mountain. What are you thinking?" When you try to explain why you need to climb the mountain, they'll say, "Look, I care about you. That is just too dangerous. You shouldn't do that. You should just stick to your job. You're lucky to even have a job in this economy. Leave the mountains to someone else." Their words will sting. They sting for me when I hear them. And for a moment, you may even think they're right. After all, these are the people who know you best. In that moment, you are going to have to look them in the eye and say with complete conviction, "No, this is my mountain, and I'm going all the way to the top." And with their criticism still ringing in your ears, you'll start climbing this mountain. Then others, more friends, other family members, parents at your kid's soccer game, people at the country club will comment, they'll say, "I heard that mountain is covered in rough terrain and the weather is unpredictable. I've had friends who tried to climb that mountain like that before, and they fell off and were badly hurt. Their whole family suffered. They lost their home. They only have one car. It's really bad. Look, I care about you. It's best to just be safe and get off that mountain." In that moment, you're going to have to look them in the eye and say with complete conviction, "No, this is my mountain, and I'm going all the way to the top." As you continue climbing your mountain, still more people, so-called friends, people you barely know, will say, "Wow, you've been climbing that mountain for a while now, haven't you? It doesn't look like you've gotten very far. How long are you going to keep at it? Do you ever wish you hadn't started?" And in that moment, as cracked as your fingers are, as heavy as your legs feel, you are going to have to look at them in the eye and say, "This is my mountain. I am going all the way to the top. You are either going to see me waving from the summit or lying dead on the side. I am not coming back." But all those comments, the skepticism, the loaded questions, they're not the worst part, actually. The eeriest feeling is when they stop asking altogether, when you are just a few weeks or a few days from reaching the peak, and there's this strange quiet. Because at that moment, the mountain haters have moved on to someone else. they're not even paying attention to you anymore. You're too far gone. Now it's just you. You, your resolve, and the crisp mountain air, and the top is within your grasp. Keep your resolve. Don't give up. Many entrepreneurs fail not because of their idea, their skill, or the market, but because they give up just when the summit is within reach. Keep your resolve. Push on. And when you reach the top and you take in that incredible view, know that there are many of us entrepreneurs on our own journeys that are there with you in spirit, camera in hand, just waiting to capture your smile. And don't forget why. Business will change you. You can't ride this ride and stay the same. The person who waits nervously at the ticket booth is never the same when she steps off the ride at the other end. You'll become smarter, more resilient. You'll discover more confidence and build new skills. You'll find that you can do things with ease that you never thought you could do at all, because business will change you for the better. But don't forget who you are right now. Don't forget who you were the day you decided to ride the entrepreneur roller coaster. Don't forget the dream you had and the excitement you felt. Don't forget the day you stepped up to the tracks. And most important of all, don't forget why.